Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Alex from 904 Fishing. Today I'm going to be doing a review of the Deeper Smart Sonar 3.0 and the iBobber. I've had a couple people asking me what the difference is and what the similarities are between these two castable sonars, so I want to go over some of the specifications. On the box, they look relatively same. The casting is 100 feet on this one and the casting on the 3.0 is 130. So overall, they look similar. I'm gonna cast them out, see what kind of information I get, see what kind of data I receive, and see what the similarities are. Looking at the specs on the box, I can see some of the information that each sonar has. Looking at the 3.0, I can see that it scans 7 times a second, whereas looking at the iBobber, I don't really see that information on the box for me to read. Looking at the back of the box, I can see that this has a wide range of temperatures that it can work in, and the iBobber I don't see on here. So overall, the data is a little more for the 3.0 as compared to the box of the iBobber. I'm gonna go ahead and attach the line to the iBobber now. There's 2 fixed points for using it. I'm gonna use the one on the side here for casting. Put my line through and I'm just gonna tie a simple polymer knot. Before you go out and use the iBobber, you should download the free app from the Play Store. Once you've got that tied on, you're ready to cast out and start the connection process. You wanna cast it out a short distance to turn it on. Go into the app, find it on the Bluetooth, tell it to connect. When it comes to the iBobber, there's 2 different modes for scanning. You've got one for looking at fish and then one for looking at the contour and structure of the bottom of the lake. Let's cast it out now and try to scan for fish. Looking at the app, I've got, seems like it's kind of blocky in the way it's moving across the screen. It doesn't look very smooth in imaging. It's going across in chunks almost. All I can see are fish icons. Looking at the different colors of the vegetation, it's just showing me weeds there. It doesn't show me how much or how close they are. The weeds must come up to the surface there. That's what I'm looking at on the screen here as I'm reeling in closer. So I'll know where to target fish. The vegetation gets a little shorter and then comes back up, so that might be a good place to target as well. Now that we've scanned for fish, we're ready to start looking at what the bottom of the lake looks like. How we do that is we go into the app, select the structure scanning mode, goes into landscape, and we're ready to cast out and see what it looks like underwater. As I'm reeling it in, not seeing much structure, not seeing any fish because I'm not on the fish scanning mode. Strictly looking at structure right now. I'm not seeing a whole lot of vegetation. See a little bit of a drop off there. It's basic imaging. It's not very hard to read. You can see the bottom, not a whole lot of ups and downs. And then once I'm done and I get it to the edge of the bank, I can press OK. And then once it's done scanning, it compresses all the data that it just received into one image. If you've got a long scan, then you've got all the data into one, however big your phone screen is. If I want to scan again, I have to start over the whole process, do it again. It doesn't store any of the data and I can't go back and look at it in the history, but right now, what I just did, I can look at, try to gather as much information as I can, and then cast it back out if I need to. A feature of the iBobber is turning on the raw data, and how you do that is you cast it out, just like you would if you were scanning for fish or scanning the bottom of the lake, and press the play button in the top left corner of the screen. What that does is turn on the raw imaging, so you can see the pixels and the various different bottoms and fish. Now that we've cast it out in the same spot as before, we're going to turn on the raw data to try to look at that. First impressions, it's pretty pixelated. It's very blocky. It's coming across kind of jagged almost. It's not smooth. Looking at the bottom, I'm not seeing any fish, any vegetation. There's nothing to tell me anything. I'm starting to see a little bit there, I guess, and there's a drop off there that I couldn't see before when I was scanning. So a little bit more fish, more colors. I don't know what the colors mean, but I'm assuming that's fish. And then the drop-off ends. So there's a hole there, I guess. Can't scroll back to look at any of the data, so it doesn't store anything, and I can't look at it. So if I want to look at it again, I have to cast it back out and do it again. Now I'm going to tie up the Deeper 3.0, which also connects using Bluetooth. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie it in using the middle notch here. The top one is for boats, the bottom one is for rivers, but when you're casting from the bank, you want to use the middle one. And we're just going to tie it on with a simple polymer knot. And then once you're ready to connect the Deeper, you have to download the free app from the Play Store and then open it up and you're ready to go. Once you're ready to connect it to the Deeper, open up your settings in your smartphone, cast the Deeper a short distance into the water, go to Bluetooth, find the Deeper, And then once it's paired, you're ready to cast it out and start scanning for fish. So as I'm reeling it in, the colors are definitely different. There's more detail on the bottom there. Definitely I can see a lot of fish there hanging out near the bottom. Those are the yellow streaks. Looking at it, there's a lot more detail. I'm seeing a lot more imaging on the bottom of the lake. I'm getting a lot more contour. And then looking at the colors here, I can see a little bit of green. I can tell that that's vegetation, and as well as the orange of the bottom. The brighter the color orange, the harder the bottom. It's very helpful whenever I'm trying to find those holes in the dips along with the vegetation and trying to pinpoint largemouth bass that like to hide in those areas. I can see a dip right there with a little bit of vegetation. That's definitely somewhere that I would want to target for largemouth bass. And one of the things that I'm noticing on the Deeper app is looking at it, I'm not marking any of the fish in the shallower water that the iBobber was showing. I can see them in the deeper water, which is more consistent with this time of day and the temperature of the water, which is on the iBobber app, but it's at a different, you have to open it up and you have to go into a different mode and whatnot. It's a little difficult to use, whereas with the Deeper, it's right here on the screen. I'm seeing a little bit of dips and a little bit of movement along the bottom of the lake. It's not the sharp drop-offs that I was seeing like with the iBobber app, so the data here seems to be a little more accurate, or maybe a little more realistic as to what the bottom of the lake actually looked like, and as I'm reeling it in. If I wanted to change any settings, I can go on the left side of the screen here, which is really easy to do with the phone holder. I can change it from detailed to basic, which will show me just fish icons in the bottom. It's very easy to read. The 290 beam is supposed to be more narrow. It gives you more of an accurate pinpointing imaging. From what I understand, it's good for ice fishing. I wouldn't use that because I live in Florida, but from what I hear, it's good for ice fishing. And the 90 beam is a little wider so that you get wider imaging whenever you're using it. You can change the sensitivity so that, you know, if it's very clear water, you can change it. But if it's, you know, murky, dirty water, like, you know, a lot of Florida ponds are, there's a lot of debris, you can change that up. You can lower it so that you don't get as much noise when you're trying to pinpoint the fish and you get, you know, a little bit of false readings. You can go into the settings and change the screen mode. We can switch it to day to get a little bit of a brighter imaging. And then that gives me a much brighter image as I'm casting. So it's much easier to see the bottom, as well as the vegetation and the fish, the dips and contours of the bottom. And one of the major things I'm noticing about the Deeper is it only took me a couple casts to get all the information I needed, whereas with the iBobber, I had to once cast out to get the fish and then cast out again to get the bottom of the lake, and I couldn't look at any of that stuff again, whereas with the Deeper, I could go back into the app, go to history, pull up the recording of all the casts that I just made, and I can scroll through and I can see all of the imaging, all the bottom, where I was marking fish, where I was marking dips, and I got all that information in one cast, very simple, and I can go back through and look at it whenever I need to. So one of the main differences that I've noticed between these two products is overall just how they feel, how they cast. I can cast the Deeper a little further. When I'm retrieving it, this one zigzags just a little bit as well. This one zigs a little, but not nearly as much as the iBobber. In the app, this one, the iBobber is easier to read. You know, the data that I get is very basic. It's not hard to read. The fish icons are there, so it's easy. You know, it seemed like there was a lot of fish icons and there was a lot of vegetation underwater, whereas with the Deeper, I could see a lot more of the bottom. I only had to scan once. I could see all the fish, all the sonar, all the data was right there on the screen for me to look at. I could go back and review it anytime that I needed to, and I didn't have to scan and throw out multiple times. It was very easy, simple. The battery life between the two devices is a little different. With the Deeper, you have 6 hours, whereas with the iBobber, you have 10 hours. Between the two devices, you know, you sacrifice things, you get more of one and less of another. With the iBobber, you've got a little less data, which is what you saw with the raw view as well as with the fish icons. So you have a longer battery life, whereas with the Deeper 3.0, you have 6 hours of battery life, but you've got a lot more data. You can pull up that data again, and definitely a lot when you're comparing the bottom of the contour of the lake. So overall, the iBobber is a entry-level sonar. You know, the reading, if you're just looking for temperature and depth, that's pretty much all you're getting. The Deeper gives you more data overall. The Deeper is a little bit more in price point, but you get more data, more information, and it's definitely more for the avid fisherman if you're going out every day and fishing new waters and new lakes.